So a couple more examples. And we are starting with the negative 4m squared minus 10m plus 24. So remember that the first thing we should do is that we should look for a GCF. And what I like to do is I don't like when the first term is negative because there's a whole bunch of other things you have to worry about if it starts negative. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take a negative out of the whole thing, as well as the fact that we can take a number out of the whole thing. What number take out of all three of those terms? It's a 2. Can't take a 4 out because the 10 is divisible by 4. So we're left taking a 2 out. So we're taking a negative 2 out. Take the negative out, this becomes positive. Take the 2 out, we're left with 2m squared. Take the negative out, we're left with plus. Take the 2 out, we're left with 5m. Remember, because we're dividing when we factor this out. And then take the negative out, so that this term is going to be a minus. Take the 2 out, that means we're dividing 4 by 2 to get a 12. So now our leading term, the one attached to the m squared, is positive, which will make life easier for us. And the numbers got smaller. So instead of looking for numbers that multiply to be a negative 72, now we're looking for numbers that multiply to be a negative 24. And add to be what? Our middle term, which is a positive 5. Now that we've taken the negative 2 out, we're using those numbers so that the numbers are smaller. So I'm pausing you a moment to come up with your list of numbers. Hopefully you're thinking about your signs first. I always think about the signs first. And if you want to try and work ahead of me as we work through this problem, then feel free. That way you can kind of check your work and check how you're doing on these kind of problems. Hopefully you find the fact that one of these should be positive and one of these should be negative. And that the positive should outweigh the negative since we're adding to be a positive. And eventually you should wind up with the fact that we should have a positive 8 and a negative 3. Don't lose the negative 2. We talked about that on Friday. We're taking a GCF out. Don't lose it throughout the problem. We don't need to worry about it too much, but we need to make sure it doesn't scamper away. So keep our negative 2 out in front. The 2m squared is still a 2m squared. The minus 12 is still going to be a minus 12. But instead of the plus 5m, we're going to use those numbers we just found, plus 8m minus 3m. And that gives us our two groups. Don't lose your negative 2. In group number 1, what can come out of both of these terms? We have a 2 as a number. Do we have an m in both of them? Yes, we do. So we have a 2 and we have an m that can come out in front. If I have a 2m, then I took the 2 out, so no more 2. I took the m out, so I have an m left over. Plus, take the m out, no more m. Take the 2 out, I have 8 divided by 2 is 4. In my second group, minus is the first sign I see, so minus is the first thing I'm going to write. That means I'm taking a negative out, and I'm taking out what number? That can come out of both of them. It's a 3. bringing the 3 in front. And we wind up with, take the negative 3 out, so we just have an m there. Took a negative out, so this minus is going to become a plus. And then we have 12 divided by 3 is 4. Ding, ding, we should have those two terms matching. So that means we can take the m plus 4 out. And when we take the m plus 4 out, in this first group, we're left with a 2m. In the second group, we're left with a minus 3. And that ends up being our final answer, except don't lose it. The negative 2, don't lose it. Have it out in front at the very end of the problem. If you don't have it out in front, then it's wrong, because you need to be able to multiply and distribute all this out, work backwards, and get back to the original problem. This one is a little bit different from the other ones that we've looked at. But the first step is going to stay the same. We're going to, before we start anything, we're going to look for what number. Is there a number or anything else that we can take out of the entire thing? So, is there a number that all of the terms are divisible by? It's 5. And now, here's a key question. Can I take an x out here? No, because they don't both have an x. One of them has an x squared, but the other doesn't have an x attached to it, so I have to just take a 5 out. X squared minus 45 divided by 5 is 9. So we have x squared minus 9. Now, we are not done yet. We are not done yet, because we still have an x squared thing happening here. The last time we looked at a problem similar to this was down here with the 3n squared plus 9n. The difference there is that we were able to take an n out, and now we don't have an n squared term anymore, and we're done. This time, we were only able to take a 5 out. We still have an x squared term happening here. And so we still need to follow our same steps that we were following before. Okay, and so this is kind of the key part that's going to be different. We're going to multiply our outside terms, which is our x squared term and our constant term that we've always been multiplying. And when we do that, we have a positive 1 times a negative 9 is a negative 9. And then we would want to add to b the middle term. We want to add to b the middle term. Well, there's no middle term there. There's no term with the x attached to it that we usually have. So that means that the number that I multiplied by x had to be 0. Because then it's the same as x squared plus 0x minus 9. That's what you can think of this as. The number attached to that middle term is 0, so that 0 times whatever this is 0, and then it goes away. So that means I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to be a negative 9 and add to be 0. So let's talk about our signs. If I'm multiplying to be a negative, what signs do I need to have? A positive and a negative. One positive, one negative. And we always talk about which one needs to outweigh the other. So which one needs to be bigger, the positive or the negative? Neither this time. Because we're adding to be 0, that means that they're perfectly balanced. That means that they're the same. So I need the two numbers to be the same, and I need them to multiply to be 9. What do we have? 3 and 3. So positive 3 and negative 3. And now we're going to follow all the same steps that we followed before. Don't forget the 5. Don't lose it. X squared is still x squared. Minus 9 is still minus 9. But then instead of my middle term, and I'm going to go a bit quicker after this step. Instead of this middle term, of 0x, we're going to write it as plus 3x minus 3x. So we're doing the same thing that we were doing. It's just that there wasn't an x from there because it would have been 0x. So we're substituting 0x into these. So the rest of the problem is going to look the same. Okay, remember, the reason we knew we weren't done is because there was still an x squared happening. So then we had to follow our process of multiplying the outside terms. We knew it was a 0 here because the middle term had to be a 0x. If there wasn't an x squared term there, we'd be done. But there is an x squared term there, so we need to follow this process. Don't lose the 5. And I'm going to go quick here. In my first group, no number can come out of both of them, but it does have an x in both of them. So I can take an x out, and I'm left with x here. I took one of them out. Plus, I took the x out, so I just have 3. Minus is the first sign I see. Minus is the first thing I'm going to write. What number? 3. I take a 3 out. I'm still left with x here. I took a negative out, so this becomes plus 9 divided by 3 is 3. And so, ding, ding, I can take the x plus 3's out. Oh, wait, don't lose it. What needs to come out in front of the whole thing? The 5. Don't lose it. But I did take the x plus 3's out, and when I do that, I am left with, in the red group, if I take an x plus 3 out, I just have x. I take an x plus 3 out, and I'm left with a minus 3. Eventually, by the time Algebra 2 rolls around, you will see this pattern and memorize it. People in Algebra 2 would probably have memorized this and called it a difference of squares. And when they see x squared minus 9, they're just going to memorize that that factors into x plus 3 times x minus 3. But you'll get there when you get there from just doing more of them.